Hey everybody, it's Anna. Welcome to a new tarot story this week. We start with the Wednesday card, and for that we have the Hierophant. So the Hierophant is a major arcana card, so it connects to an important life lesson. And the number 5 connects to conflict and challenge. So the image here seems to be a Pope-like figure. In fact, he's often associated with the Pope. He's raising his hands in blessing, and there's 2 acolytes in front of him. It's as though he's offering them instruction or support or blessing to kind of come into the temple. So some people read this literally as connected to religious structures, which it can be. But actually, when the Rider-Waite deck was created, it was created in a time when the church really did represent the larger community. So I tend to think of the Hierophant as inviting us into the transition from our private life, our home life, into the larger community. So in your private life, which is, by the way, the 4 and the 4 number in the major arcana, which is the Emperor. That's the job of establishing your household, establishing your stability, your patterns, whatever you need to feel like loved and supported. It's basically, it's valuing your own well-being first, which I think is really important here because the 4 comes before the 5. Before you go into the world offering gifts and your blessings and your vigor, your first priority is to establish this place of safety and privacy. So when you're in this place of safety and privacy, you get to explore, you get to grow, you get to experiment, all those things that help you figure out who you are, help you to learn who you are. But at some point, you're ready. These gifts are you're kind of in that place of stability. You've got yourself sorted. Now it's becoming too small for you. It's time for you to go into the world with your gifts. Now, the reason this is a 5 point is because inherently moving from a private place to a public place means your visibility increases. And because we are inherently pack animals in our creaturedom, we in our DNA we know it is best to be invisible. It's best to be part of the pack, don't stand out, because the predator picks off the ones that stand out, right? So there is an understandable we are slow, resistant, we're hesitant to become visible, and that's really where the challenge point comes from. The Hierophant's there to help us. To encourage us, to help us be bold, to help us find our place in the world, and also to help us feel safe in being who we are. So I think, as I've mentioned before a few times, I think the relationship between the Emperor, who's the 4, like the father energy, the protective energy, and the 5 is sort of, you toggle back and forth, right? But you need to start with the 4. And I think that's something that, especially when we're younger, we skip. When we're younger, we tend to skip all of the integrating pieces of the major arcana. I talk about how there's action steps, there's integrating steps. Well, when you're young, it's hard to realize the value of the integration. So you tend to just go straight through lots of action steps, and then you're exhausted, and then whatever you created doesn't quite work, and it's just not sustainable. But you have to, usually you try that for a while before you realize, okay, I need to change it, right? So often when we're young, we'll jump into the world before we actually have that 4 work completed, before we have our household, before we have our resources, before we feel pretty stable and safe. We'll kind of jump into the world because we're so excited to get our gift into the world. And then, when you get criticized, which always happens, it's not just something you can shake off or you kind of recover from easily. Maybe it's very injuring and you get very tired and you forget to take care of yourself because you haven't really done the work of the 4. So I feel like the challenge here is to recognize that while we are here to give our gifts to the world, that is I believe that's our contract. We come on the planet to deliver blessing. You have to first, at least in my experience and the way I read the cards, you have to first make your first priority care of yourself. And you don't really realize how important that is until you've lived a while on the planet and you didn't take care of yourself. you got a bit beat up. And then you go back and learn the lesson. So just consider that if you have been in the world and you've been given your gifts, you've been given your blessings, but you don't feel well, you don't feel strong, you feel kind of beat up, you feel kind of tired, you feel discouraged, consider that it's time to actually step back from the Hierophant into the Emperor. Where have you not taken care of yourself? Where are the leaks in your private life? So I think the Hierophant it's an ongoing challenge that calls us forward, but also calls us outward. But also, while we're going outward, we go inward as well, which is the Emperor work. The interesting thing about the Emperor and the Hierophant is they're both masculine energies in the spiritual journey. And often you'll see a masculine and feminine, they're back to back in the major arcana. But here we've got 2 masculines, which are 2 edicts of masculine spirituality. One is caretaking and one is adventure or venturing out. And we got to keep the balance really closely between those two. Otherwise, we begin to feel the results. So consider today how you're bringing your gifts to the world, how you're making yourself visible in a way that feels happy and exciting, a little bit scary, but like worth the scare. And where maybe it's time to retreat. Maybe it's time to step back from the Hierophant, go back to the Emperor and take care of yourself, because both could definitely be part of this lesson. See you tomorrow for our next card. Bye.